Good evening and welcome. I am Councillor Dennis Pennyworth, Chairman of the Western Area Planning Committee. Members of the committee joining me this evening are Councillors Adrian Abbs, Jeff Beck, Hilary Cole, Caroline Culver, Clive Hooker, Andy Moore, Tony Vickers, who's the Vice Chairman, and Howard Wollaston. The following officers are attending to advise and support the meeting. We have the Team Leader of Western Area Planning Committee, Mr. Simon Till, Senior Planning Officers, Mr. Masiwa and Mrs. Sean Cutts, Highways Officer, Mr. Paul Goddard, Legal Advisor, Mrs. Sharon Armour, the Clerk, Mr. Jack Karimi, and the Zoom host, Mr. Gordon Oliver. Before we start, I'd like to explain for the benefit of those watching that tonight's meeting is being held both over Zoom and with councillors present and COVID compliant in the council chamber. As those present in the chamber are socially distanced, they're permitted to remove their face masks while seated. No fire alarm is planned this evening, but if it does sound, please leave the chamber by the exit doors there and gather in the Dolphin car park. Also, please, if you can ensure that your phones are on silent. Representatives making a presentation to the committee have also been encouraged to do so remotely via Zoom, but those here in person are equally welcome. The meeting is also being live streamed on YouTube. Do members have any questions about the way in which this meeting will be conducted before we proceed? No? Item 1 then, apologies. Mr. Karimi, have we received any apologies for tonight's meeting, please?
Councillors Phil Barnett and Jeff Cant have sent their apologies. Councillors Andy Moore and Jeff Beck are attending as substitutes.
Thank you very much. Item 2 now, the minutes. Members, do you have any observations of the minutes for the meeting of the 13th of October of 2021, please? Nothing? No? Okay, may I have a proposer and a seconder that they're a true account? Proposed, Councillor Cole. Second, Councillor Moore, thank you. And I'll take a show of hands, members, thank you. Okay, I declare the minutes have been approved. Thank you very much. Item 3 now, declarations of interest. Any members wish to make a declaration of interest? Councillor Beck? No. No? Grant? Councillor Vickers?
Chairman, I've been heavily lobbied by the applicant on applications 1 and 2, and as a member of Newbery Town Council, which has always supported the retention of football facilities at Faraday Road, I am predisposed towards supporting officers' applications there, but I intend to take full part in the proceedings.
Councillor Vickers, Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm on the executive of the West Berkshire Council. I'm also policyholder for leisure and culture, but this application falls under the ambit of the policyholder for finance and regeneration. I also sit on the London Road Industrial Estate Working Party. I will judge both of the applications numbers 1 and 2 on the agenda according to planning merits.
Councillor Wollaston, Councillor Moore.
Same as Councillor Vickers, if you could recall that. He spoke so eloquently.
Thank you very much. And any further, Councillor Beck?
On second thoughts, I also am a member of Newbery Town Council, but on the occasions when these applications for the football ground come before the
Thank you, Councillor Beck. And that's it, members. Thank you.
Chairman, perhaps I ought to also add, as Councillor Wollaston's mentioned, I'm also a member of the London Road Industrial Estate project board, but I don't think that prejudices me in this application, in applications 1 and 2. And with regard to application 3, I am the one of the ward members for Coldash and Cheveley, but I'm not on Coldash Parish Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Members, are you all done there? Thank you very much. Moving on then to item 4, For those of you who are new to the meeting, I'll briefly explain how it works. Officers will present the application to the committee, after which the following can make representations for a maximum of 5 minutes each: the parish or town council representatives, then the objectors, supporters, the applicant and/or agent, and finally the ward members. Following this, the committee members will have the opportunity to ask questions of clarification of the speakers and officers. The committee will then debate the application and vote on the decision. There are 3 applications on the agenda for this evening, starting with the first application. Mr. Masiwa, would you like to begin your presentation, please? Councillor Abbs, I'm sorry, before you do, Mr. Masiwa, Councillor Abbs.
Chairman, just to point out that the council chamber feed seems to be frozen. So I don't know if that is just us or whether it's everybody. I'm looking at the screens and my screen, and I can see Councillor Hooker going to his desk, I believe.
Mr. Masiwa, if you can just hold fire 1 second, I'll just turn to Mr. Oliver.
I'm just checking it on my phone and I can see it appears to be working. Yeah, it seems fine.
Thank you, Councillor Abbs.
Chairman, I've lost half of the pictures of people on my screen as well. I don't know why.
Sorry, Mr. Oliver, just to clarify, is it working on YouTube, is what you're saying?
I can see it on YouTube, yes.
Okay. So it ought to be. Yeah.
But it's not on here. It's frozen.
It's frozen.
It's frozen on here, but then is it working on the live screen?
So a couple of reporters filled it. It looks fine to me. The Zoom
It's-
is fine and the live stream is fine. It's the council
The
chamber.
council chamber, yeah.
Sorry, it's the actual.
Yeah, let's look up our YouTube.
It's just the camera.
That's good. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Oliver. Okay, Mr. Masiwa, thank you, Councillor Abbs, for that. Mr. Masiwa, if you'd be good enough to begin your presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. I'll just share my screen. Good evening, members. Firstly, we have an update sheet for both items 1 and 2. The update also corrects an error in referring to the Sustainable Drainage SPD as dated 2017 in the report. It should read 2018. And that is corrected on a couple of paragraphs as indicated in the update sheet. There is no change to the recommendation and conditions are as set out in the agenda. Members, the first application is at Faraday Road Stadium. The application seeks outline planning permission for the replacement of the clubhouse and construction of a new spectator stand at the ground. The matters for consideration this evening are access and layout. There are no objections from statutory consultees as listed at section 4 of the report, and conditions are recommended within the agenda report. The reason the application is before you this evening is due to the significant public interest and proposal affects council-owned land. A summary of all representations are given at section 4 of the report. And as indicated, officers are recommending approval subject to the schedule of conditions. The application site is known as the Newbery Football Ground. It's an existing recreational facility as shown on the plan, covering approximately 1.5 hectares to the east of Newbery. The facilities comprises a single grass playing pitch, which we can see there. A concrete slab, which is for the former single-story clubhouse, which was damaged by fire. And this can be seen in this location here. The site also has a hard standing area, formerly the location of a now dismantled spectator stand, which is this area here. The site falls within flood zone 2 and 3 in the Environmental Agency flooding map. The proposal is for the outline permission for a clubhouse, which we can see the outline here, and the new stand, which is shown in this location here. The proposal also includes the addition of 4 parking spaces, which we can see here, and some cycle parking stands, which are located in this location. In terms of background, Mr. Chairman, the proposal, background to the proposal is submitted in paragraph 1.4, of the report, which includes an indication when both proposals were presented to the Western Area Planning Committee in January 2020. Initially, that was to determine the council's position regarding an appeal by the applicants for non-determination, and the appeal was subsequently withdrawn. So those applications were never determined. As indicated in the report, Mr. Chairman, Policy CS 18 sets out that the district's green infrastructure should be promoted and retained. Policy CS 18 outlines the definition of green infrastructure includes all outdoor sports facilities. In this particular case, Policy CS 18 is relevant. The supporting text of Policy CS 18 also recognizes that the multifunctional green infrastructure in the district should be retained and enhanced for visual amenity and for sport and recreation purposes. The Newbery Vision 2026 to 2036 sets out the council's and community aspirations for the future of Newbery, and the document indicates support for growth of recreation and sporting facilities within Newbery. In terms of this site, Mr. Chairman, the applicants do not own the site. As I indicated, it's owned by the council. So there is no current lease or rent agreement on the site, and notice has been served on West Berkshire Council. The West Berkshire Council Property Services have submitted a letter of objection to outline that the proposal runs counter to the council's own aspirations regarding the regeneration of the site. The objection has been noted by and acknowledged by officers. However, the planning application is required to be considered on its individual planning merits. It will be between the applicant and the landowner to agree any implementation and delivery of the development. The proposed clubhouse will be required to meet BREEAM under Policy CS 15. However, as the application is in outline form, Mr. Chairman, further considerations will be required at reserve matters where officers consider the BREEAM condition can be attached. The next slide just shows briefly the site constraints. It shows the flood areas. Flood zone 3 is the darker blue, and flood zone 2 is the lighter blue areas. As you can see, the site area is predominantly within flood zone 3, and it has been assessed in terms of the submitted flood risk assessment by the Environment Agency, and conditions are recommended in the agenda report. The yellow line indicates the conservation area, which is on this side here. We can also see a public rights of way footpath and the River Kennet, which is a triple SI. There are site photos within the submitted within the addenda pack, but I'll just go through the photos, Mr. Chairman, just to help with the presentation. This photo shows the stadium access and car park from Faraday Road. This is Faraday Road, we've got the access there. The next slide shows the existing car park and the former, or the old clubhouse prior to the fire. Again, with a photo within the car park and the old clubhouse. This photo was taken within the site from the existing pitch towards the clubhouse before the fire. And this is the current state of the site, Mr. Chairman, showing the clubhouse slab, which is retained on the site following the fire and demolition of the building. And that was on a dangerous structure basis. The next photo shows the site from outside the Harris fencing surrounding the football playing pitch. We can see the existing car park in there. The proposed clubhouse is going to be situated in this location in the grass area and will extend this way. Another photo of the site showing the location of the proposed clubhouse is going to be around here. This photo shows the slab looking south towards the River Kennet. Again, the hard standing area, which accommodated the former stands that were removed. So that's still in there, and we can see the pitch and some industrial units. Again, the pitch and hard standing areas. This slide just shows the area of where the pitches will go, but I'll present this later, Mr. Chairman. And this is the boundary of the site with the footpath and the River Kennet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That ends the presentation for item 1.
Well, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to turn now to Mr. Paul Goddard and get a highways view on this one, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The proposal before you, this particular planning application, there are obviously 2 before you tonight, but this proposal is generally replacing existing facilities. And any activity is usually off-peak. So therefore, I do not consider that there will be any traffic or car parking problems from this proposal. And therefore, your highway officers raise no objection.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to now move on to our speakers on the application. And the first of those I have is Councillor Vaughan Miller of Newbery Town Council. If you're good enough to take the stand, Councillor Miller. I'm sure you know the form. You have 5 minutes when you start speaking. And with 1 minute to go, I'll give you warning and then 10 seconds to wrap up if it comes to that.
Just for clarity, my comment, it's difficult to split the comments around the 2 applications because it's essentially one facility that we're talking about. So if you don't mind, I will present my speech. I won't need to speak on the second application then.
Just one moment.
You might want to speak on the second one in case any member has any questions.
Yeah, I can.
Because
absolutely.
otherwise they won't be able to ask you questions if you haven't said anything in your speech.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
Thanks for that, Mrs. Armour. Are you holding the clock there? Councillor Vaughan, when you're, sorry, Councillor Miller, I do apologise. When you're ready, you may start.
Thank you. So the town council supports this application. It's also and recommends notes it's also supported by Sports England, the FA, the Football Foundation, Newbery Society, and of course Newbery Town Council. I just want to quote the Town Council's strategy on this, which is to provide a first-class football ground and stadium to enable Newbery men's, ladies and youth teams to aspire to play football at a level equivalent to the size and importance of the town. That would be National League for a men's team, Southern Premier for a women's team. The aspiration of this council is for the ground to remain within a short walking distance of the town centre, allowing for footfall to increase as the clubs grow up their league structures and attract more home and away fans, with all the benefits to the town's businesses that implies. Inability to provide a suitable alternative site should result in the ground on Faraday Road being redeveloped with 3G pitches, providing higher availability of matches and training for the community, and be scalable so it can grow from initial step 4 level to higher levels up to step 1, National League Southern Premier, should our team's success require it. So that's on the support and the Town Council's strategy. It's scalable. So this application and this site is clearly scalable up to steps 2 and probably 1. As per the Town Council strategy, we recognise that scalability is crucial, most importantly for the aspirations and ambitions of our football clubs and to provide future benefits to the town centre. The application has a sustainable business plan with no ongoing subsidies required. Rather, it will return a profit year on year. Whether or not you consider sustainability as a planning consideration, Sports England certainly does. This is not an investment by a developer. This is a council-owned asset using taxpayers' money of which you are stewards. Therefore, sustainability for the facility itself and of the clubs it is intended to service is a crucial aspect. It's also sustainable for senior men's and ladies' teams with a proper clubhouse and bar. Hungerford Town played step 2. In order to maintain a senior men's football team at that level costs between £2,500 to £3,500 per week. They generate this income from gate receipts and, importantly, the bar. A proper clubhouse and bar is crucial to sustainability and ambitions of our senior clubs. It will provide a pathway from youth to senior football. There are many men and women in Newbery who have some of their best childhood memories playing at this stadium. Many youths get lost to football for various reasons, but playing at a proper football stadium with first-class facilities would certainly encourage retention. Clubhouse was well used by the community before, but of course they could now have a much better facility for parties, weddings, wakes, baby showers, charity events, and much more. It is sustainable from a climate perspective. It's within a short walking distance from public transport hubs and easy access by other means of active travel. There are also extensive additional parking facilities close by where needed. Importantly, we've noted that West Berkshire Council will retain ownership of the asset and will get an income and return on the investment. The build time could be quick. All the key utilities are already there. The car park is already there. In the current climate, build time could be 6 months to a year, which realistically would be a similar time frame to another proposal. Finally, 1 minute, Councillor Miller. Okay, finally, this application respects the value of both assets, pitch and clubhouse, as an ACV. It is popular with the town. The vast majority of people want the ground to remain at Faraday Road. There was 2,000 people supported it, and there was a clear support in a Newbery Weekly News survey. I'm sure if the council did a proper consultation on the 2 current applications for a new AGP, it would get a clear steer to proceed with this one. And I'll keep other comments for the next one. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Members, if you'd like to remain at the lectern, members, any questions, please, of Councillor Miller? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. We have no objectors speaking on this evening, nor supporters. We have the applicants, Mr. Paul Morgan, Mr. John Stewart. Are you both speaking this evening?
Yeah.
if you'd be good enough to take the lectern. And the same applies when you're ready, 5 minutes between the two of you. And I'll give you fair notice with a minute left to go, and then 10 seconds left to wrap up.
I'll be covering this bit, John will be covering it. That's okay.
So long, that's 5 minutes in total.
5 minutes each.
5 minutes in total, I'm afraid, is.
Now, we did discuss this at the site, so we said we've got 5 minutes per application.
Sorry, can I just clarify? So you're going to be doing this application and your colleague's going to be doing the next application. Is that correct?
Okay, yeah, okay.
So long as that doesn't count my 5 minutes.
No, 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 it doesn't. And just to clarify, sorry, so you are?
My name is Paul Morgan, yes.
Mr. Paul Morgan, thank you very much. Right, Mr.
Good evening
Morgan,
again to everybody.
when you're ready, we'll start the clock.
Yeah, just the first point, it was mentioned that Property Services objected to this. I'd just like to remind people that this football ground has been in the ownership of the council since 1963. And I like to think that the West Berkshire Council own property on behalf of the community. And this application we're talking about enriches and benefits the community it's serving. So that's the first point. The ground is and will remain a community facility. It has been since 1963, and it will continue to be the case moving forward. The clubhouse has for many years been used as a cost-effective option for community groups for social events. Wakes, parties, have all mentioned that. It's also a long track record of hosting charity events. The clubhouse is not only of value to the local community, it also allows the ground to be self-financing, and this will continue. Very important point. It's in a great location. It's right next to the town centre, as we know, and it provides sustainable transport. It's on the edge of Newbery town centre. There's easy access to sustainable modes of transport. From Newbery town centre, the football ground can be accessed by foot or cycle in just a few minutes. The site is well served by public transport, half-hourly bus services and cycle routes are available. Car parking is plentiful and exists now. That's a key point. We're not looking at additional car parking, it's already there. So from an environmental and commercial perspective, that's very important. The design. The footprint of the new clubhouse will be very similar to the current building on site. The main difference is the clubhouse we're looking at now will be on 2 levels. The second story will create more efficient use of land and provide an improved internal layout for all users. The new clubhouse will provide changing rooms, toilets, office, conference room, and other ancillary uses on the ground floor. And a bar and cafe and a viewing area will be on the first floor, looking over the pitch. In terms of planning policy, I think Maisie covered most of it. We know it's currently fits into your current strategy. Area Delivery Plan Policy 2, existing community facility will be protected and where appropriate enhanced, and CS18, green infrastructure. The Newbery football ground is identified in local planning policy as CS18. The policies are unambiguous on this point. The district's green infrastructure will be protected and enhanced, and that developments resulting in the loss of green infrastructure or harm to its use of enjoyment by the public will not be permitted. This proposal will vastly improve the quality of this facility and result in a better social environment for those who live, work and play in this catchment area. Maisie mentioned it's in a flood zone 3. What he didn't mention is that this is a water compatible development. As you're probably aware, Annex 3 of the Flood Risk Vulnerability Classification states this, and I quote, amenity open space, nature conservation and biodiversity, outdoor sports and recreation and essential facilities such as change rooms. This ticks that box. It's already a flood compatible development. The sustainable business model, again, Mr. Miller mentioned it earlier. This will tick 2 boxes. First of all, it will be it will tick the box of a first-class FA-accredited quality 3G pitch that can be used for senior men's and women's teams. It will also tick the box of a community facility. We know from the plan pitch strategy, and I know Mr. Wollaston knows it backwards, we are 7 3G pitches short in this area, 7 pitches short, and this will tick that box. So it tick 2 boxes. It will provide a permanent and sustainable community football ground. The operating model is that the facility will be run by a not-for-profit community group. That's very different from another model that's been put forward, and that's very similar to the last operator down there. Sustainability of the project will be achieved through using the income from the pitch and the clubhouse to maintain the facility to a high standard. Yep. The operating model will produce a financial surplus. And you've probably seen this on the planning application in the business case. In year one, we're sort of predicting a slight loss of £2,000, but in year 5, we're looking at a surplus of over £20,000. So what's in it for WBC, West Berks Council? The scheme will be cheap in terms of capital costs. 75% of the funding will come from external sources. But also, the West Berks Council will continue to receive income from rent. There's no risk to West Berks Council, no subsidies required. And all of this will be an asset that can still stay on your balance sheet moving forward. You'll still own the land, and the value of the land will increase in value. So that's all I have to say. Hopefully that's in within my 5 minutes.
That was a very well-timed run, Mr. Morgan. Thank you very much. Members, any questions of Mr. Morgan, please?
Go on.
Can go on and on and on and on if you like.
Okay, go.
Yeah, just a simple one, actually. Obviously, we're talking a 3G pitch.
Yes.
And we've mentioned biodiversity. And could you expand on how a 3G pitch can help biodiversity at all? Or is that something I can ask officers later?
I think the simplest way to describe it, and we've been to a number of courses, John and myself, on this, it acts very similar to the way that grass does. So in terms of rainfall falling on top of it, it's permeable, so it actually goes down. So when it's being built, you have substructure in there to make sure the drainage will go through. So it acts in a very similar way to natural grass, basically.
So I shouldn't have any concerns?
No, not at all, no.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very simple. On the outline that you've produced at the moment, what is the size of the stand and how is that likely to be scalable?
The stand at the moment, that's a very good question. The stand at the moment on the first phase is, I think, is about 250 seat stand. But as was mentioned by Councillor Miller, the last stand that was there before it was demolished and taken away and moved back to Hungerford was a stand for 500 people, a massive stand going right down the size of the pitch. So in answer to the question, it's all about growth. So the initial investment will be for a stand of 250. As and when the requirements and the teams go through the various leagues, then the stand can be expanded. As I say, you know, again, Councillor Miller mentioned step 2. That stand, what was removed from Hungerford, was the equivalent for a step 2 facility, which has now been used down at Hungerford. So plenty of room to put massive stands in there.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Hooker next.
Thank you for your presentation. It's on parking.
Yes.
You said the parking was already there.
Yes, I did.
Is this parking that's outside of the curtilage of the ground? Because on the site meeting, the training pitch now is going to take up some of what is the existing parking space. Maybe
no, there's no parking spaces. It's not. Doesn't encourage at all in the parking spaces. As Maisie said on his presentation, there's 4 dedicated car parking slots for the football club. That's primarily for visiting directors, by the way, so they can have a parking in there. So that's a 4. But the existing car park as it currently stands outside will remain the same. And that's not encroaching in that. And also, as you well know, because of the site visit, there's loads of parking down at Faraday Road, loads of parking nearby. So parking, I think, as Mr. Goddard mentioned, will not be an issue. In fact, there's plentiful parking there. And the other benefit, of course, as Mr. Goddard mentioned, was that prime use of that will be the evenings and the weekend when so shouldn't be a conflict. So, but there's loads of parking down there. That's one of the benefits of the scheme, staying down there.
Supplementary, just for clarification, are you saying there's no loss of parking space?
I don't believe there is, but I don't believe there is. But again, if I'm wrong, I put my hand up and say I'm incorrect. But I don't think there is any loss of parking at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Hooker. We can put that to Mr. Goddard in the questions to office.
No, it was mentioned in his presentation that parking was there and it wasn't affected. Just from my observations.
No, I don't believe it is. I'd be very surprised. My understanding is it's not impacting parking at all at the moment. And why would West Berkshire Council be deprived of their £2 parking fees down there? So,
members, any further questions? Mr. Morgan, thank you very much indeed.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I turn now to Ward Member, Councillor Beck. Councillor Beck, if you address committee from your seat there.
Thank you, Chairman. I welcome this application. I agree with the officer's recommendations, and there's not really a great deal I wish to say, Chairman. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Beck. Members, any questions, please, of Councillor Beck as ward member? Nope, short and sweet. Thank you very much. I'm going to open this up now to questions of officers. Councillor Hooker, is that a legacy hand I have on screen, or?
Well, I'll come back to Councillor Goddard and some clarification on the parking, that was all.
Can I just, I'll jump into a minute. I think the point you mentioned there.
I'm sorry, we can ask officers, but thank you very much for that. Councillor Hooker, please.
Yeah, it's just a clarification from Mr. Goddard again about whether there's actual loss of parking on this site with the development of the training pitch.
Chairman, I can confirm that there's no car parking being lost from the existing parking area that's fronting the site. That's being retained. All this development proposal is within the footprint of the site itself. If anything, there's 4 additional parking spaces being added overall to that parking area that exists there.
That's in the area.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Hooker?
The clarification was in the red area, not the parking outside of the.
Oh, sorry. No, there's no parking being lost within the red area within the application site itself. No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. Councillor Abbs.
Thank you, Chairman. A clarification from officers re the power, the energy. How is the new facility to be powered?
Mr. Masiwa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As outlined in my presentation, the application is outlined, only considered access and layouts. The applicant has submitted layout in terms of the site layout. At reserve matters, we will consider the second half of layout in terms of the actual buildings as well as the stands. And as indicated in our presentation, that's when we will consider BREEAM. It is anticipated that at reserve matters, the applicant will submit further details in terms of the design of the actual clubhouse building and how it will function. And we can then assess the sustainability of the building at that stage.
Could you comment at all on the BREEAM level when you get to the detail, or can we not even discuss that at this point? Do we have to wait for the detail to come through?
I can answer that. The policy requires that all non-residential achieve excellent rating. So we'll attach a condition, and the applicant will then submit an assessment of the BREEAM and indicate what level they've achieved.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
That satisfies your question. Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Moore, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify the timeline here for this application. Statutory date of 8th of October 2020, and then extension of time agreed. How was that agreement reached? Who applied and who agreed? Is that clear?
Mr. Till, would you like to take that?
Chairman, that's not really relevant to the consideration of this planning application.
Fair point. Okay, thank you very much. Members, any further questions of officers? No? Okay, I'm going to... Councillor Wilson, I do apologise. Did you? No, you didn't. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to now put this to the debate. Who's going to kick me off, for want of a better phrase? Councillor Abbs.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm more than happy to go along with officer recommendations on this one. I think, yeah, I can't see in planning terms, I can't see any reason why we take any other route. So I don't think we need to so much.
Can I take that as a proposal, Councillor?
You can if you wish, but no, we usually, I didn't think you'd like to take the first person speaking as a proposer, but happy to, yes.
Councillor Beck, second.
Well, I think we should have a bit of a debate.
I'm happy if if you think it prudent, I can take a proposal and second there, and then.
But I'd wait until, let's wait for a second.
Okay. Councillor Beck.
I'm very happy to second that proposal, Chairman.
I'll take. I've taken advice from legal counsel, and we're going to put this around the room first to see if anyone else wants to make comment before we second that. But that's noted, Councillor Beck, and you're in the frame for seconding that. And any members have anything else to comment? Councillor Williston.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm frankly annoyed that this and the next application have come to this committee. These applications are a waste of members' and officers' time, but have to be brought here as the land is owned by West Berkshire Council. There are, in my view, no planning objections to these applications, but they are unimplementable, as is known by the applicants, as there is no intention from West Berkshire Council to allow them to proceed in the light of the clear ambition for comprehensive regeneration of this and the larger site. As such, they are vexatious. On planning grounds, there can be no reason to refuse, and I was going to also propose that we move immediately to a vote to approve.
Well, I do have some hands. That's noted, Councillor Williston. Thank you very much. I do have some hands, and I'll take those before we go to that. Councillor Vickers.
Chairman, I was going to be, non-political on this, but I think we have to remember the unusual nature of the owner, the applicant. The applicant is the elected district council. The ambitions, intentions of the current administration of the council, which are not a planning matter, may well change after an election.
Take a point of order, please.
The applicant is not the council.
Well, sorry, I stand corrected. Not the applicant, but the landowner, not the applicant. And the applicant's intentions are irrelevant when it comes to planning. And I think it shows a great deal of arrogance on the part of the last speaker to say that the owner. To assume that the owner will never change its intentions. So I'm very glad to see this application come before this committee. It is non-contentious in planning terms, although I would have dearly liked to see what the next draft of the emerging local plan says about this land, because the entire strategy of the administration is based upon this site being used for housing, and there is absolutely no intention as far as the planning authority is concerned to have housing on this site. So I think it's the other plans that are vexatious.
Your point is made, well made at that. And we're steering into the realms of politics when we're here in a planning meeting. That was the last of the hands I had on the show. Nothing else that I can see. Councillor Beck was preparing to second Councillor Abbs's proposal, I think. Wasn't it, Councillor Abbs? Councillor Beck in second, and does this find favour with council? Take a show of hands, please. That is, to my mind, unanimous. Mr. Karimi. Members, thank you very much. Moving swiftly on. Item number 2. And Mr. Masiwa, I'm come straight back to you, please, for presentation of the second application on tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This will be a brief one, just to expand on the previous presentation. Members, the second application is again at Faraday Road. It's this time it's a full planning application seeking full planning permission for the renewal and expansion of the existing football pitch to form a new 3G main pitch and a smaller 3G training and practice pitch. Again, there are no objections on this application from statutory consultees. and the representation and consultations are outlined on section 4. The application is referred to committee for the same reason, significant public interest, and the proposal affects council-owned land. And the recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is approval subject to the recommended conditions. The site description remains the same as previously presented. However, I would draw members' attention to the proposed red line on this application, which now covers the whole site, as opposed to the clubhouse, which was here. In terms of the background, the same application was referred to Western Area back in January 2020, as explained earlier, for consideration, subject to an undetermination appeal, which was subsequently withdrawn. As explained in the report, the latest proposal is to create the main 3G artificial grass pitch, which is this one indicated here, and also a training practice pitch, which will also be 3G, which is located here. The main pitch measurements are 110 meters by 80 meters, and the maximum length for the training pitch is 53 meters with a width of 26 meters. Policy CS18 remains relevant on this application as well as on the previous one in terms of offering outdoor sports facilities, and officers consider that it's compliant with that policy. As explained on the first application, Sports England raised no objection to the proposal. There is a change from a natural grass pitch to a 3G pitch, and Sports England would have no objection in changing the pitch to an artificial grass pitch. The above plan just shows the site area, again with the site constraints. Again, the red line is changed. In this case, it's a blue line, which shows the site area. The conservation area dissects the site area, as we can see there. And we've got the River Kennet to the south. Again, there are site photographs. I've only selected 4 just to refresh members on the application. So the main pitch will be replacing the existing grass pitch, which we can see here. The proposed training pitch will be extended from the existing car park, which we can see there, onto the grass area. I think it's more clearer on the next picture, this one. So the training pitch will be in this location and will extend into the grass area. And as previously presented, we're going to have the proposed clubhouse in this location. The next slide just shows again the grass patch where the training pitch will be. This photograph illustrates that there will be an extension of the training pitch or the pitches. The smaller pitch will extend to be in line with the main pitch. I think it's clearer on the next photograph. As you can see on this photograph, this is the area where the proposed training pitch will be located. And as we can see here, this is the boundary of the existing training pitch. So both pitches will be aligned in this area. I think that's the presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Masuwa, thank you very much indeed. Mr. Goddard, again, from a highways perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Your highway officers also raise no objection to this proposal. Mr. Masawi mentioned the different area of red line. This proposal includes the whole site, and the proposed smaller pitches do remove existing car parking, which is an issue that Councillor Hooker was touching upon with the previous planning application. Even though there's a loss in car parking within the site, your highway officers are raising no objection. With the previous planning applications, there was surveys undertaken by the applicant of the car park fronting the football club and Faraday Road itself. And at the times when we would expect football to be taking place or other sports taking place within the site, it was found that the area had a plentiful supply of parking to cover the expected uses. Once again, in traffic terms, it's all off-peak as well, and therefore your highway officers raise no objection.
Mr. Goddard, thank you very much indeed. On to speakers again, and the first of those, as last time, Councillor Miller. Councillor Miller, if you'd be good enough to turn on your microphone, and when you're ready, we'll start the clock.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm pleased that we live in a local authority where democracy rules, not autocracy. Now, so I'll just give you my conclusions from my previous speech, basically, that on the basis of the following, it's support from key national governing bodies, local organisations and the public. Its scalability to step one. It will provide a pathway for our youth to senior football. Its sustainability as an asset and the sustainability supports the sustainability of our senior clubs. It supports active travel and climate objectives. It should be a relatively fast and cost-effective build. It ensures West Berkshire Council's retention of the asset and its respect to the value of the site as an ACV. I commend this application for approval. Questions?
Members, questions, please. No, I think you're free to go. Thank you very much indeed. Again, objectors, there are none, nor supporters. The applicant agent, I believe, Mr. Stewart, you're going to address the committee this time. If you're good enough to turn on your microphone, and when you're ready, sir, we'll start the clock.
Hello, good evening. Okay, so at the risk of possibly repeating one or two things that my colleague and Councillor Miller have said, a little bit of history. To me, this is a matter of kind of right and wrong. There's always been football in Faraday Road in that area, and for there not to be, it seems very wrong to me. And it's an ironic coincidence that the first time this planning application went through, got put forward in 2018, coincides with the time the ground was shut. Football has not been played there ever since. Generally speaking, we believe this supports a general redevelopment ambition within the London Road estate because we're proposing to make the ground better than it was. We have got plenty of support, as mentioned. We had 2,000 signatures supporting the fact that we would like to put a better ground in Faraday Road. We held a planning consultation. We actually got 100 people to turn up and listen, which was great locally. There's been no public objections to our knowledge, and there are no groups opposing us. I mean, the community group is the main sort of cohesive voice of local football in the area. And of course, you know, it's an asset of community value. It was put down as one in 2016 and has just been renewed until 2026. So that clearly states that it's a value to the people, community locally. And we've also got a confirmation certificate of lawful use of the land as a football ground under the use class F2 of the Use Classes Order Amendment 2020. So basically, to me, it's a matter of the football should be there. It's right for it to be there. The ground's been there for 60 years, 63. And previous to that, probably 40 before that, locally, right next to it. You can see aerial pictures from 1938 online, and there's a football ground there. Getting to the pitch itself, just a matter about the car park that was mentioned, the internal car park. Historically, that was probably only used by the groundsman and perhaps one or two people who were doing maintenance at the ground. It was generally locked and not used when the ground was being used for football. So it wasn't really accessible as a car park in that sense. It was storage and sheds and so on. So back to the pitch again. Again, there's much evidence the need for a quality pitch in the area. The council's playing pitch strategy and the leisure strategies and the FA's local football facility plan, and of course the local support from the community group and our campaign to save the ground. So there's plenty of support, and just the local clubs and football teams and people who want to play are just looking for quality grounds all the time, finding it very difficult. The pitch as proposed is actually bigger than it needs to be, which is great, and it just goes to illustrate that the ground is of a large size and favourably comparable with any others that might be in the area. It's got a good footprint, and it's obviously got passes the FA national ground grading, because the key thing about that is when you build a new football ground and you play at a certain level, the caveat is that the ground must give the overall appearance an impression of being a football ground for the National League system. So when you consider that Faraday Road did have that, the size of it was already there. You had a perimeter fencing, turnstiles, floodlights, clubhouse, changing rooms, the stand, large stand, and pitch barriers. You had the whole lot on that footprint, and this is what it could be in the future as well. Again, because it's just got a larger footprint than any alternatives that are currently being looked at. Regarding the flood risk assessment, again, the hard impermeable surface area will be reduced by 42.5%.
That's 1 minute, Mr. Steer.
Okay, and after the development relative to existing total impermeable hard area currently, and that will be beneficial for runoff regarding flooding. So to summarise, I think it's future-proof, it's scalable, and can accommodate football's growth and ambition for a growing town like Newbery. And as mentioned by Mr. Councillor Miller, there was a possibility that ground could support step 2 or step 1 even National League levels of football. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. If you were good enough just to stay at the lectern with the microphone on, I've got a few hands here from members. First of those is Councillor Abs.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just a quick one. You mentioned the word fencing there, and but things have changed from, I guess, when this application was drawn up to now, in that quite a lot of the fencing was ripped down.
Yes, it's all gone.
It's all gone. So how does that affect the planning application in any way, shape or form? Can you comment on that, please? No.
That would all need to be replaced anyway, ultimately. I mean, the fact there was fencing there, it would need to be new fencing, I think, for the new application. You've got to have a fence round the perimeter of the ground.
Indeed.
And also you have to have a lower fence to stop spectators getting onto the pitch.
So was that part of the business plan, or an assumption that it was going to be replaced anyway? How is your proposal sit in this? I'm sorry, you can't.
I think it was. I'm not personally sure of the detail, but yes, I'm pretty sure
offices later.
It would have been, yes.
Thanks.
Perhaps Councillor Vickers.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm puzzled why the red line extends so far to the west, and I'm wondering if it's something to do with biodiversity, because although you referred to the pitch as being permeable, or there will be infiltration, so it's not a drainage issue having artificial surface, there is a condition about microplastics. Like I would have thought that a 3G pitch, an artificial pitch, is pretty well a biological desert, apart from maybe a few microbiological items, or perhaps a few million of them. But in terms of the wider biodiversity, is that area to the west seen as perhaps a way in which biodiversity net gain could be achieved for the scheme? Or what was the thinking? Or was it perhaps something that the planning authority suggested you might extend the red line into?
Well, as far as I know, again, I wasn't involved in that detail, but as far as I know, that was the footprint that was defined the football ground and its surrounding perimeter. And obviously, you're right. I mean, clearly, the artificial turf would only be where it needs to be. It wouldn't be everywhere. It would just be for the purposes of playing football regularly and frequently.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Just a quick, how important is the training pitch area to your aspirations for step 2 and beyond?
It's very useful for two reasons. One is it allows in a match for substitutes to train and to get warmed up and fit, and also for the hiring. It's very useful as a waiting area while there's a changeover between the hirers over they spend an hour playing and then they'll disappear, and it just gives the people a chance to wait in an orderly fashion and then get onto the pitch. The training pitch itself, generally speaking, if the ground was divided up into areas for different training evenings with different teams, then of course you've got a small area there separately, so you could probably divide it into 3 plus that 4th small area. I don't know if that answered the question, but rambled on a bit there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moore. Members, any other questions? Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart, thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you.
Again, I'm going to turn to Councillor Beck as ward member. Councillor Beck, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Chairman. Once again, I support the officers' proposals as set out in the papers we have before us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beck. Members, questions of Councillor Beck? No, none. Then questions of officers, please. Let's see, no hands. Oh, sorry. Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I could ask Mr. Till sort of a variation on the question that I asked the applicant. I'm curious about the position of artificial sports pitches replacing grass and how that affects the biodiversity rather than the drainage. I mean, we haven't got an expert here, and I noticed that Natural England and the ecological officers haven't objected, although there is a condition.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. I think I'll have to refer you to the case officer, Matthew Masiwa, to answer that question, as he has the detailed case knowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Till. Thank you, Councillor Vickers. The consultation responses we've received from biodiversity experts in terms of the council ecologists and the Environment Agency indicated that there is some research that indicates that 3G pitches do pollute microplastics into the environment. These microplastics tend to go into the rivers or end up in the rivers. As such, Environment Agency and the Council's ecologist recommended that we request measures to ensure that microplastics don't make it into the rivers, particularly the local rivers in terms of River Lambon and River Kennet, which are protected in terms of conservation and biodiversity. It has also been indicated within the comments from Environment Agency that it's a new area. It's not really fully understood, and it's an ongoing area of research. However, we consider that the conditions would help in trying to address the issue as far as possible. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much. I think it does, Councillor. Vickers seems happy with that. I've got Councillor Moore next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, there doesn't seem to be an objection from West Berkshire Council Property Services to this application by comparison with the last one. Is that an oversight, or can that be confirmed that they have no objection?
Thank you, Councillor Moore. It's not an oversight. They objected on the Clubhouse application. and not on the playing pitch application. It's only on the Clubhouse application that we received an objection.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Masiwa. Members, any further questions of officers on this? No further hands. I'm going to open this up now to debate. Who'd like to start me off? Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't want to rehash my comments, but I still stand by completely on the previous application.
Can we just stick to the planning merit? Sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm coming on to that. As far as I can see, there's no objections from a planning perspective, and I just move that we vote to support officers' recommendations.
Councillor Wollaston, I'll take that as a proposal. I've got Councillor Abbs.
Thank you, Chairman. A bit of a preamble. I'm happy to second, to be honest. If I've got a concern, it's an extremely slight one, and I'm sure officers will have taken it into account. It's to do with biodiversity and just making sure we are checking that off, and we are moving from a real grass to artificial grass, and the offsetting necessary to do the biodiversity net gain is very easy to do on that basis. So I don't know if we need to condition or not. It might already be there, but I'm happy to second anyway. So.
Thank you, Councillor Abbs. Members, anything further to add? I see no further hands. I'm going to put this to the vote. I have a proposal from Councillor Wollaston, seconded by Councillor Abbs. I'll take a show of hands. Councillors, please. Again, that is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Members, if it's all the same with you, I could use another glass of water. I've got a tickly throat. I did test negative on a lateral flow this evening, so everything's good on that score. But if you want to take 5 minutes, I think we'll adjourn for a little while. Thank you. Right. That's why you're going to the phone. Gordon, I'm sorry about that. I did. No, you weren't. No, and no reason you should have done. Is there anyone grab a glass?
Well, I've got one that was given to me earlier that I haven't touched. So if you want
water, to buy the.
You can have that one. It's not touched.
No, you may need it.
You might need
I think Eric said that it was the council chambers.
Yes, I did notice. I can see the Zoom is all fine and the live stream is fine. I didn't notice the cameras.
Yeah, the cameras. But Eric said, because he emailed, he sent me a message saying it's all fine from what he's looking at.
Well,
here's what he said. So he said, I'm watching it on YouTube and it looks okay. So
okay.
Given that I can't even work the stopwatch, I'm waiting for it to fix it now.
Okay, members, thank you very much. Right, we come on now to the third and final item on tonight's agenda. And I'm going to turn now to Mrs. Cutts. Mrs. Cutts, would you like to begin your presentation, please? Mrs. Cutts, can you hear me? You're on mute currently. Mrs. Cutts, can you hear us?
There might be a problem because she seems to be the message. Maybe they're going to swap.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
Mrs. Cutts, take your time. You're currently on mute, but adjust your seat and do what you have to do to make the magic happen.
Hello. Apologies for that, Chairman. Sorry.
Not
the
at all.
mouse stopped working on my laptop screen, so my apologies.
No, take your time and please start when you're good and ready.
I can't hear. Matthew, I can't hear anything. Sorry. What am I doing wrong? There we go. Right. Okay, I think I'm back. Chairman,
We can hear you, Mrs. Cutts, loud and clear.
Thank you. I can hear you now. Apologies for that. Sorry, I lost the mouse on my screen. So thank you, Chairman. Members, you will recall that this application was brought to the Western Area Planning Committee for determination on the 9th of June 2021. I'm just going to share my screen with you.
Mrs. Cutts, before you go much further, Councillor Williston appears to be having some IT issues. If you just hold fire for one moment, please. That's it. Sorry, Mrs. Cutts, we're just waiting for Councillor Williston to come back online. So just bear with us one moment, please.
No problem.
Okay, Mrs. Cutts, we're back up and running again now, and please now begin your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Let me just share the screen. And there we go. Okay, thank you, Chairman. Members, you will recall that this application was brought to the Western Area Planning Committee for determination on the 9th of June 2021, along with the application then seeking prior approval for the conversion of farm buildings to dwellings. The prior approval application was refused as the committee considered that the amount of work which was required for the building fabric did not constitute permitted development. And this associated application for works to the building, the creation of an access way, turning heads, infilling of slurry pits, creation of residential curtilages, landscaping and demolition of a redundant barn was deferred because it was dependent on the other and to give time for the applicant to consider their options. The applicants have now submitted an appeal against the decision to refuse the prior approval application and also an appeal against the non-determination of this application. Therefore, we are seeking a resolution to inform the appeal inspector on what the decision you would have reached if you had the opportunity to determine the application. This application only relates to the associated works and not to the principle of the conversion works. The site is accessed via an agricultural track off Cold Ash Hill, as you can see here, and it is the land around the buildings which is proposed to use as residential land, the kind of hatched area on this plan, with the slurry pits to the north of building C being filled in. A pond and a wildflower meadow planting is also proposed. Here are the site photos showing the access track from Cold Ash Hill, and you can, this is the approach to the buildings. This is the area of one of the buildings to be converted, and then the area for the wildflower meadow planting. This is the building which is proposed to be demolished and returned and converted to a paddock area. And this is the area for the slurry pits that are proposed to be converted to infilled and converted to garden land. It's also proposed to add drain pipes to the buildings to be converted. And this is the location of the pond. View of the site. Cold Ash Parish Council have objected to the application, and there is a summary of their objections in the officer report. These refer to the principle of the conversions, the size of the development, the use of the farm track, and the design. These issues are all dealt with in the prior approval application. There were no other objections raised by the statutory consultees, and matters such as the details of landscaping and ecology can all be dealt with through conditions. There were also objections from members of the public as set out in the report. However, these mainly refer to the principle of conversion, the use of the access road, design and appearance, and other matters which are also dealt with under the principle of the conversion, and the impact of the residential use. And these are not the subject of this application, and they will be decided by the inspector in the appeal for the prior approval application. The main consideration this evening, members, is whether the proposed residential curtilages and parking area are acceptable forms of development. Policy C1 has a presumption against residential development in the countryside, except for in stated permitted exceptions. And policy C8 sets out the criteria for permitting the extension of existing residential curtilages, which are to provide off-street parking, and or to realign a garden boundary or to extend a garden to achieve a similar level of provision to other dwellings in the immediate area. Given that there is no planning permission by virtue of a planning application or under permitted development rights for residential use of these buildings, there is no existing residential curtilage to be extended. In addition, the creation of the additional parking areas and turning heads to serve a use which has not been given permission would not fall within the circumstances for permitting an extension to the residential curtilage. Given that there is no authorised residential use of the site, the proposed residential curtilages are not considered to be permitted under policies C1 and C8 of the HSA DPD. The creation of these parking spaces and garden area where there is no associated residential use would have an adverse impact on the setting and appearance of these agricultural buildings and would urbanise the agricultural appearance of the site. The demolition of the barn could be achieved through a separate application under the prior approval process for the demolition of the building. Whilst there are visual benefits from the proposed wildflower planting and the pond, these would not outweigh the harm identified by having unrelated residential curtilages in this agricultural location. It is recommended on this basis that you resolve to advise the inspector that if you had the opportunity to determine the application, it would be to refuse it for the reasons set out in the officer report, as the proposed parking area and residential curtilages for unconnected residential purposes do not accord with the criteria in policy C8 for extending residential curtilages, and which will have a suburbanising impact on the setting and appearance of the site within the countryside, and so would also be contrary to policies CS14 and CS19. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Cutts. And moving on to Mr. Goddard, please.
Chairman, thank you. This proposal that's before you tonight is simply to regularise the internal layout of the site around the buildings, to regularise the provision of parking and turning for the proposal. And on that basis, I've no objection to the layout that's been submitted, and therefore all highway officers have no objection to this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. We are now going to move on to our speakers on this application, and the first of those is Mr. Councillor Bernard Clark. In fact, Mr. Oliver, can I ask you to invite Councillor Clark to the chamber, please? Councillor Clark, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for joining us. A regular visitor to this chamber, albeit remotely. You know how this goes, Councillor Clark. You have 5 minutes to address the committee, and the time will start when you begin.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bennyworth. I actually can't do much more than just agree with Mrs. Cutts and her summation. What I was going to do very briefly was just tell you how important this site is to the parish of Coldash. It's very public and people really, really care about it. Obviously, we were pleased when the original application was turned down. But I would just like to say a couple of other things. One is the extension of residential curtilage there around farm buildings seems to us to be completely inappropriate. It can only feel like it's the beginning, almost like a Trojan horse towards some other kind of development. And we can only see it in those terms. The second thing I wanted to say was that we've spent an awful lot of effort working with West Berks to put together the neighbourhood development plan for Coldash. And it's now been submitted for screening. And this development, this extension of curtilage, would seriously undermine the NDP, which, as I say, not only have we done a lot of work on, but there's a very strong consensus. Obviously, it's not been agreed entirely yet. Strong consensus behind it. So yes, please, along with Mrs. Cutts, please do refuse this application. And also, and I know you already know this, we really care about this particular site. And we are very grateful for West Berks turning down the original application.
Mr. Clark, thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions of Councillor Clark, please? I'm seeing no hands, and with that, Councillor Clark, I will bid you farewell. Thank you very much.
Good night. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. We have no objectors speaking or supporters. I do have the agent, Mr. James Isles, who I believe is joining us on Zoom. Mr. Oliver, could you do the necessary? Thank you very much. Mr. Isles, good evening to you.
Good evening, Chairman.
Mr. Isles, thank you very much for joining us. You've, I'm sure you've gathered how this works now. You'll have 5 minutes from when you start speaking, and the time will start when you do.
Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to speak. As you've mentioned, my name is James Isles from Provision, representing the planning agent for this application. This is a slightly unusual case before you this evening. As your officer has explained, we've appealed both the refusal of the Class Q prior approval application for conversion of the agricultural buildings to 5 dwellings, and separately the non-determination of this linked full application before you this evening. At the committee back in June, both applications were recommended for approval by your officer. However, the officer's recommendation on the Class Q scheme was rejected. As such, a decision was made by the committee to defer decision on this related full application, given the earlier decision. Tonight, you are therefore effectively being asked to advise the planning inspector of what decision you would have made on this linked application. As you've just heard, this full application relates to a limited works to enhance the Class Q residential scheme, including extending the residential curtilages, improve landscaping and parking arrangements, and to demolish the remaining barn and slurry pits. The scheme will also improve biodiversity with creation of a new wildflower meadow and a pond, both very beneficial habitats for wildlife. In addition, there will be visual improvements to the site by the removal of the adjacent redundant barn and the reinstatement of this to paddock area. The purpose of this parallel application is therefore to deliver a number of tangible benefits to enhance the Class Q residential scheme. I understand that there are no technical objections from any statutory consultees, and no adverse impacts have been identified on the area of outstanding natural beauty to the north of the site, flood risk or highways issues. Hence, your officer's report previously recommended the application for approval. It would complement and improve on the parallel Class Q scheme. The officer's report tonight recommends that the application should be refused. This is logical given the fate of the linked application in June. However, we trust that members will note your officer's original assessment in June, which is effectively that this application could have been supported had the associated Class Q residential application been approved. We therefore respectfully request the members acknowledge in your debate and in the wording of your resolution that the sole reason for refusing this application tonight is that the associated Class Q scheme was refused. Had it been allowed, thereby establishing residential development here, I suggest the committee would have had no sound reason to have refused this associated application. That important clarification will be appropriate for the due consideration of the planning appeals by the planning inspector, helping to clarify that the determining issue in this case is the suitability of agricultural structures for conversion, i.e. the linked Class Q application. Thank you.
Mr. Isles, thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions of Mr. Isles? Nothing? No? Okay, Mr. Isles, thank you very much for attending this evening.
Thank you, Chair.
I shall ask Mr. Oliver to escort you back to the waiting room. Councillor Abbs. No, I'm going to, ward members, I'm just going to look at Councillor Cole. You'd like to speak, Councillor Cole?
Thank you, Chairman. as this application is associated with the prior approval for the conversion of agricultural buildings to dwellings, which was refused by this committee, as we've heard this evening, my view is that as there is that there's no need for this accessway and extensions to residential curtilage and parking because of the refusal of the associate application. And we should be consistent in our decision making and endorse the recommendation in the agenda, which is to advise the planning inspectorate that had the council had the opportunity to determine this application, it would be refused for the reasons as set out in the officer's report. Thank you, Chairman. This is a technical determination, and I feel there's really no point in having any protracted debate about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Members, any questions of Councillor Cole, please? No? I'm going to open this up now to questions of officers, and fastest finger first, Councillor Abbs.
Thank you, Chairman. Very simple one. I think I know the answer, but just to 100%. The order in which we looked at the applications last time meant that this came after, correct? This application was the second of the two that we decided not to determine because of the first decision. Assuming that's correct, is that correct? 100%.
Mrs. Cox.
Yes, that's right. It was the prior approval was refused, and then this one was deferred.
Okay, that's all I needed to be 100% sure on.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cole.
Thank you. This is a question about the neighbourhood development plan. The neighbourhood development plan of Cold Ash is well advanced, as Councillor I forgot his name. Councillor Clark said it's actually an independent examination. So I was just wondering if either Ms. Cutts or Mr. Till could say to explain. It will eventually become a material consideration in planning application. Is the fact that the neighbourhood development plan so far advanced that weight is given to it during this determination?
Thank you, Councillor Cole. The neighbourhood development plan at this stage of consideration would be attributed due weight within considerations, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Members, any further questions of officers? Seeing no hands. I'm now going to open this up for debate. Who will start me off, please? Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. I must thank both professional planners, Mrs. Cutts, and indeed the applicant's advisor for getting things clear in my head that we really have no option other than to support officers' recommendations, because it would make no sense whatsoever to do anything else. I'd be most interested to see how the appeal goes, particularly in the light of the fact that there is a neighbourhood development plan which carries some weight already and may, by the time the appeal is heard, carry even more weight. So it will be a very interesting one. I mean, I without reiterating the arguments of the prior approval application, it was fundamentally because we didn't feel it was right that those particular agricultural buildings could make a decent residential use and would, I think, establish a bad precedent. But I won't go over that again. So I'm very happy if there aren't that many people to who want to speak, to be one of those that either proposes or seconds officers' recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you. The reason it's nice for the clarification question was if I had refused the first one, there's absolutely no way I could then go, oh, I'll approve this one then. So
Yes.
We're-
Be back there, I can see the subtitles.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Till, do you want to recap there, please?
Members, this is just to confirm that this application, the resolution on this application will not be a determination on the application. The application has been appealed in terms of non-determination already. Instead, the resolution will be referred to the inspector as advice on what the local planning authority's resolution would have been were it to be in a position to determine the planning application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Till. Members, nothing further to add on that. And I've taken Councillor Vickers' proposal, Councillor Abbs seconding the proposal, the recommendation, the Service Director of Development and Regulation refuse. I'll take a show of hands, councillors, please. That again is unanimous. Members, thank you very much. That concludes this evening's entertainment. Thank you, everyone. And please remember to clear and disinfect your own desks before leaving and wear a face cover whilst you're moving around the room. Members, thank you very much indeed. And please remain seated until we are taken offline.